Hello, my name's Fiona and I've had type 1 diabetes for about 33 years now. I have had an insulin pump for about 15 years and I've got a 13-year-old daughter who, the reason I got the pump was because I was going to have her. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer about 3 months ago. And I had been contemplating looping before, like since the beginning of this year. My pump was up for renewal, so I thought, oh well, I'll get a pump that I can loop with. So I just started to look, and strangely I joined one of the CamAPS webinars the night before I went to the breast clinic for the first time, and thought, wow, that's amazing. So I was sort of in my head playing around with, CamAPS and sort of self-funding that. I was opposed to DIY looping. So I went to the breast clinic, and it was a one-stop shop. So I had a mammogram, an ultrasound, a biopsy, saw the consultant who pretty much there and then said, it looks very like you've got breast cancer. And I always remember the nurse in the room sort of coming up to me and going, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, am I going to die? Am I going to live to see my daughter grow up? And that isn't what I was thinking. The two things I was thinking was, I spent this morning talking about how much work I've got to do over the next few months. How can I possibly not be at work? This is awful timing. And then it was like, okay, and what about diabetes? So it was the, how asking questions about, well, how's chemo going to affect diabetes? And at that point, they're like, whoa, just hold on, you might not have to chemo yet. And then I went into another room with the nurse again, and I said, well, this diagnosis has just made up my mind. I'm going to self-fund the CamAPS because I need something to take the brain power away from me. So the CamAPS will do the thinking for me, so I can concentrate on everything else. So that's sort of where I am really. So I've had two cycles of chemotherapy. So this is my brown wig. I have a blonde wig and I have lots of different hats at the moment. But from a diabetes perspective, I think I was probably more nervous about having to take the steroids than I was about the actual chemotherapy, because I remember having to have steroids when I was pregnant and hearing the horror stories around steroids and diabetes and type 1, and just thinking, wow, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. So sort of doing sort of lots of reading and thinking, sort of like, and checking out what I needed to do. And it was only when I went for my chemo assessment that they just very matter-of-factly went, oh yeah, well we give you sort of 8 milligrams of IV dexamethasone just 20 minutes before we give you the chemo, and then you take some more dexamethasone for the next 2 days at home. And I think the colour probably drained from my face at that point, in that sort of panic of like, how am I going to deal with that? But actually when it came to, and I had a chat with Sarah before I started my chemo, and she helped me to sort of think about how the CamAPS would handle the chemo. And it was great because I'd only been using the CamAPS for 2 weeks. So my new pump was funding went through in 2 weeks from submitting the paperwork to having my pump training, which I think is the fastest on record. I think this is my like 5th pump or something over the years, and I've never had one that quickly, even though I've been in the past. I've just been replacing my one pump with an updated version. So this is a whole new one in training, which took a little bit of time to get my head around, but then had 2 weeks on CamAPS before I started chemo. And I must say that first week of using CamAPS and the chemo, it was an absolute dream. So I changed my personal glucose settings down to 4.5 because I thought that the algorithm would make the algorithm work a bit harder to get it to that point. I had boost on for sort of 48 hours. And yeah, I think I only went above 14 for about 20 minutes in that first week, which I was so impressed with. I said to my consultant, if I can get 50% in single figures in that first week of having the chemo and the steroids, I would be delighted. So the fact that that first week I didn't really worry about what my blood glucose was doing, and it just allowed me to just, well, basically sleep. That first week after chemo, all I do is sleep, and eat a few, eat a little bit, but is basically sleep. And there's no worry about having to mess about with temporary basal rates and correction doses, because I know, and especially the correction doses, not doing that was just amazing, because I think it's so easy to overcorrect and sort of and deal, and sort of then it will all go horribly wrong. So it was really good. And then the second cycle was probably even better, and I think I was 75% time in range for that week after chemo, with me doing very little. So I did exactly the same things that I did in the first cycle, and occasionally I might have given myself a little, an odd unit here and there if I think, it looks like it could do with coming down a little bit. But generally, it just did it all for me, which allowed me to think about other things and not to have to worry about diabetes. It was like a little bit like a diabetes holiday, which was exactly what I need, so I don't have to worry about it all the time. So yeah, that's what's going on in my life at the moment.